Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown, and there's my gum-chewing friend Matthew Stockton. What?
I haven't done that in a while.
Okay.
I always feel like a little bit like we're Bob and Doug.
Which one is which, though? Yeah, it doesn't really matter, does it?
They were both cool.
Yeah, they're both cool.
Like us.
Like us, right. Exactly. When you look up cool in the dictionary...
There's a picture of us.
No, I was just going to say our pictures are not there. They're not there.
Speak for yourself, big boy.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
In early May 2000, Nova Scotia was shaken by a series of brutal murders that would eventually be linked to a single man, Glen Douglas Race. Over the course of just over a week, two well-liked men, Michael Knott and Trevor Brewster, were killed in separate violent attacks. The case would expose not only the horror of the crimes, but also the tragic intersection of untreated mental illness, the vulnerability of marginalized communities, and the failures of the system meant to protect both the public and those suffering from severe psychiatric disorders. This episode, part 1 of 2, will look at the lives of the killer's Nova Scotia victims, the chilling details of their deaths, and the complex psychological landscape that shaped Glen Race's descent into violence, as well as his subsequent flight across the border into the United States, where he killed again before being caught. This is Dark Poutine, episode 371, Two Flavors of Justice, part 1, The Murders of Michael Knott and Trevor Brewster. Michael Knott, known to his friends and family as Michael, was a man whose life was defined by service, devotion, and a quiet resilience that left a lasting mark on everyone who knew him. Born in Channel, Port-au-Basque, Newfoundland, in 1962, Michael was raised in a close-knit family, the son of Kathleen and the late Eric Knott. He grew up alongside his siblings Kathy, Tom, and Reg, surrounded by the rugged beauty of Newfoundland's coast and the warmth of a community that valued hard work and loyalty. From an early age, Michael was instilled with a sense of responsibility and compassion, traits that would guide him through the many chapters of his life. At just 17, Michael made the bold decision to leave his hometown and join the Canadian Navy. This choice set the course for a career that would take him across the globe and profoundly shape his character. As a cook in the Navy, Michael quickly earned a reputation for his skill and dependability. He completed 2 tours of duty in the Persian Gulf and served as part of NATO peacekeeping forces on the Israel-Sinai border, experiences that demanded both courage and adaptability. His shipmates remember him as someone who could be relied on in the most challenging circumstances. Quote, "He was an excellent cook and a good friend," recalled a former shipmate from HMCS Toronto who noted Michael's professionalism and camaraderie during their time at sea. After retiring from the Navy in 2003, Michael settled in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where he continued to build a life centered on family and community. He was a devoted father to his 2 children, Jennifer and Andrew, and maintained a close relationship with his ex-wife, Margaret. Jennifer remembers her father as a, quote, "special dad who did everything for his 2 kids, made an impression on everyone he met, and did not deserve his fate," end quote. She recalls how he would take her to school, bring her home, and always be present for the critical moments in her life. Even after the end of his marriage, Michael and Margaret remained best friends, a testament to the strength of their bond and his commitment to family.
Yeah, it's easy to forget how radical it can be to remain close to your ex.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that tells us a lot about the kind of man Michael was.
Yeah.
Not letting pride sort of get in the way of love.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my exes don't speak to me. There's one, my first ever boyfriend, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
After some time, we remained friends.
Yeah.
But there's a few. No, absolutely not.
I mean, I'd rather remain friends with people I've broken up with, but that doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's too painful for one of the parties. Anyway, even after the breakup of his marriage, Michael's home in Halifax was a place of warmth and welcome. He loved spending time in his garden, tending to the plants and flowers that brought him peace. Family gatherings were a frequent occurrence, and Michael took great joy in preparing meals for his loved ones, especially his daughter's favorite, chicken parmesan. A year before his death, he helped his son Andrew move out west, supporting his children as they pursued their own paths in life. Jennifer's memories of her father are filled with moments of laughter, advice, and unconditional love. On a Facebook page dedicated to Michael Knott and Trevor Brewster, Jennifer continues to write letters to her father, sharing news of her life, her academic achievements, and her ongoing search for his guidance. Quote, "I can feel it in my stomach that something happened to you that night you dropped me off. But I tried to shake the feeling, but it kept getting stronger and stronger, even when I called the police," she wrote, reflecting on the deep connection she still feels to her dad.
I don't begrudge her for that. I think people mourn in their own ways. But when someone in my life dies, I unfriend them on social media. It's not because I don't love them, but it's because I did, right? And I don't think Zuckerberg reminding me that they have a birthday coming up or asking if I want to tag them in a memory is the right thing. For me, that's sort of emotional spam.
Yeah. Grief
isn't something I want curated by an algorithm, right? Or a slideshow with that cheesy ukulele music on Facebook, right?
Oh boy.
It's true. I'd rather carry them in sort of a messy human way that matters. Smell, a song, random Tuesday when it hits harder than usual, right? And I don't think unfriending is forgetting. Like, some people don't understand why I do it, but for me, it's not forgetting. It's kind of refusing to outsource my grief to a platform that thinks closure comes with a like button,
Yeah.
And like I said, teach their own. And I wouldn't judge Jennifer. I don't judge anyone else. I get it. But I want to know your opinion. Digital mourning is kind of this weird modern ritual that we've fallen into, right? It's sort of like network grief. And I did read that there's studies that showed that when people do it, it's because they want to express to other people that the dead person mattered. And I get that. But I kind of worry that it disrupts the normal arc of grieving.
I think it's just something new to incorporate into grieving. I think it's a healthy part of the process.
Yeah.
And if your process is unfriending somebody, then that's your process. We can't say whether or not it's healthy for one person to do one thing or someone else to do something else.
And I'm not. And I've just said that as well. I wouldn't judge anyone on that. But for me, once a person's gone, I don't do anything on social media like that. I'd rather, for me, I just want it to be real, and I don't want sort of reminders by following them.
Fair enough. While Michael's public life was defined by his roles as a father, friend, and Navy veteran, he also navigated the challenges of being a gay man in a society that was not always accepting. He kept this aspect of his life private, as noted in court documents. Quote, Paul Michael Knott had a private life which he preferred to keep private. He was a homosexual who would occasionally attend areas where other men were known to meet each other. End quote. This discreet search for companionship was a part of Michael's life that he managed quietly, never allowing it to overshadow his relationships with his family or his sense of self. Friends and family accepted him unconditionally, and his private life did not diminish the love and respect they held for him. The days leading up to Michael's tragic death were in many ways unremarkable, as he went through normal routines and enjoyed the small pleasures that defined his life. On May 1st, 2007, he spent the day running errands and later dropped his daughter off at work, promising to see her later that night. When he failed to return home, Jennifer's concern quickly turned to alarm. She sent frantic text messages, called the police, and tried to shake off the growing sense of dread that something terrible had happened. Her instincts, tragically, were correct. Paul Michael Knott's body was discovered on the afternoon of May 5, 2007 by an ATV rider navigating a wooded path in Mill Cove, a quiet area on the shores of St. Margaret's Bay in Lunenburg County, Nova Scotia. The path is surrounded by dense forest and far from the bustle of Halifax. Michael was a long way from where he went missing. The driving distance from Halifax, where he was last seen, to Mill Cove, where his body was discovered, is approximately 54 kilometers by road. The scene that greeted the ATV rider was stark and unsettling. Knott's remains, left in the secluded woods, bore unmistakable evidence of violence. The location, remote and difficult to access, suggested that his body had been intentionally placed there to delay discovery. The RCMP responded quickly, cordoning off the area and launching a major investigation. Forensic teams worked meticulously at the scene, documenting the position of the body, collecting trace evidence, and searching for any clues that might point to the perpetrator or the circumstances of Michael Knott's death. An autopsy was conducted soon after his body was recovered, and the death was officially ruled a homicide. While the RCMP initially withheld specific details from the public about the manner of death, later court proceedings revealed the brutality of the attack. The wounds on Michael's body were severe and numerous, consistent with a frenzied assault. The forensic pathologist noted multiple stab wounds to the thigh, chest, neck, and throat, as well as defensive injuries on his hands and arms, indicating that Michael Knott had fought desperately for his life. The killer had used Michael Knott's own car to transport his remains from Halifax to Mill Cove, abandoning the body in the woods. This was corroborated by the discovery of Michael Knott's blue Chevy Malibu, which was found days later on Old Guysborough Road behind the Halifax airport, about an hour's drive from Mill Cove and far from the location of the body. The separation between the vehicle and the remains complicated the investigation and initially left police uncertain about where the killing had taken place. The condition of Michael's remains and the forensic evidence collected at both the dump site and his vehicle were crucial in piecing together the events of his final hours. Blood spatter analysis in the car confirmed that the fatal attack had occurred there, and trace evidence linked the vehicle to both the crime scene, later determined to have been Citadel Hill in Halifax, and the remote woods of Mill Cove. The autopsy findings combined with the forensic evidence left no doubt that Michael Knott's death was the result of a violent homicide, and the deliberate concealment of his body pointed to a calculated attempt to evade detection. Investigators would later learn that Michael Knott had been fatally stabbed in the front seat of his car while parked near Citadel Hill. For those who don't know, Citadel Hill has a long and complex history as a gay cruising location dating back to at least the 1960s and 70s, when public spaces like the Citadel, the Halifax Commons, and the Triangle were among the few places where gay men could discreetly meet and find community in an era of widespread discrimination and legal persecution. While these outdoor sites offered rare opportunities for connection, they also exposed men to significant risks, including harassment, police crackdowns, and violence. Accounts from local LGBTQ2S+ historians and community members recall that violence against homosexual men was not uncommon at Citadel Hill and similar sites, with, quote, many of our friends and acquaintances landing up at the local hospital emergency, end quote, due to assaults and little to no police support or protection. The need for secrecy and the threat of violence meant that cruising at Citadel Hill was often fraught with fear, even as it remained a vital part of Halifax's queer social fabric for decades. The discovery of Paul Michael Knott's body brought horrible confirmation to his family, who had hoped for his safe return, but now faced the reality of a senseless and brutal loss. Jennifer, in particular, has spoken movingly about the enduring pain of his absence. Quote, "I live every day without my father, knowing that I will never see him again. He will never walk me down the aisle or sit with me at Christmas dinner, and therefore that loss I have experienced is unforgivable." End quote. Michael's funeral was attended by family, friends, and former colleagues, a testament to the many lives he touched. Services were held at St. Timothy's Anglican Church in Hatchet Lake, and at St. James the Great Anglican Church in Channel, Newfoundland, where he was laid to rest beside his father. The community mourned the loss of a man remembered for his kindness, reliability, and quiet strength. "He was a great father," Jennifer said, summing up the legacy of a life lived with integrity and love. Meanwhile, investigators worked to reconstruct Michael Knott's last known movements and interviewed his family and friends to establish a timeline. Given the violent nature of the crime and the apparent lack of motive or suspect, police were on high alert. They began canvassing areas frequented by Michael, including Citadel Hill. The unusual circumstances of the murder, an apparently random brutal attack with the victim's body transported and hidden far from the city, prompted authorities to warn the public, particularly those in the LGBTQ2S+ community, asking them to be cautious in known cruising areas. Investigators appealed to the public for any information about Michael's whereabouts after May 1st or sightings of his vehicle. What cops privately feared was that this was not an isolated event. Those fears were realized when Trevor Charles Brewster's body was discovered on the afternoon of May 9, 2007, beneath a weathered boardwalk at the edge of Frenchman Lake in Dartmouth, a location known quietly among locals as a meeting place for gay men seeking companionship away from the public eye.
Yeah, and that's the sad truth about this. Gay killings often aren't isolated events, right?
Yep.
And unfortunately, we're seeing this fact again.
Again and again and again.
Yep.
Trevor Charles Brewster, too, was a beloved figure. He lived in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and was remembered for his kindness, loyalty, and deep connections he forged within his community. Born in 1962, Trevor grew up surrounded by family and friends who would later recall his warmth and generosity. He spent most of his adult life in Dartmouth, where he became a fixture at the Steak and Stein restaurant, dedicating 24 years to his work there. Colleagues and regulars alike described Trevor as reliable and cheerful, someone who always had a friendly word or a helping hand to offer. Quote, "He was well known and well liked in the community," friends would later say, a sentiment echoed in the outpouring of grief following his death. Trevor's passions extended well beyond his workplace. He was an avid gardener known for his green thumb and the pride he took in nurturing his plants. His love for animals was equally apparent, especially his devotion to his dog Polar, who was his constant companion. Trevor's home was filled with pets over the years, and friends remember how he would light up when talking about them or sharing stories of their antics. Quote, "He loved pets of all kinds, especially his dog Polar," recalled one friend, adding that Trevor's gentle nature seemed to draw animals and people to him. Travel was another of Trevor's great joys. He relished the opportunity to explore new places, and his vacations were a regular topic of conversation among his friends and coworkers. In the days leading up to his death, Trevor had just returned from a trip to the Dominican Republic, excited to share stories and photos from his travels. His enthusiasm for life was infectious, and he often encouraged others to seek out their own adventures, no matter how big or small.
I don't think Trevor means like booking flights or chasing bucket lists here. I'm kind of feeling him in this point. I think maybe what he is trying to say to people is stay curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would seem to be encouraging others to seek out their own adventures. And he wasn't just being upbeat. He was probably like trying to offer up to his friends the opportunity of discovery of self in a lot of ways. And I think in a world that often wants marginalized people to shrink into themselves, travel is an active expansion, and it says I deserve to take up space and I deserve some joy. And I would have liked Trevor.
Yeah. I think I would have liked all these people, which is interesting. Oftentimes I wonder whether or not I would have hung out with anybody in the stories that we tell.
Or maybe you don't get a sense of them well enough, right?
Yeah. But in this one, I really do feel that, I feel the same way, that I would have enjoyed that person.
Yeah.
Trevor's social life was vibrant and inclusive. He was a member of John Merkley's Glamour Club, a local social group, and maintained a wide circle of friends who valued his loyalty and sense of fun. His sister, Robenia, his godchild, Drake Johnston, and numerous aunts and uncles and cousins were all part of the close-knit network that supported and cherished him. Quote, "He was the kind of person who would do anything for his friends and family," said David Bachman, a longtime friend, emphasizing the selflessness that defined Trevor Brewster's character. In his private life, Trevor was open about his sexuality and comfortable with his identity. He was known to frequent Frenchman Lake, where he was found, which, as we mentioned, was another known gathering place for gay men in Dartmouth, where he could socialize and find a sense of community. Friends recall that Trevor was supportive of other LGBTQ2S+ community members, often offering advice or a listening ear to those who needed it. His openness and acceptance made him a trusted confidant and a source of strength for many. The days before Trevor's murder were filled with his ordinary routines and, just like Michael Knott, simple pleasures that he loved. He returned from his vacation, worked a shift at the Steak and Stein, and spent time gardening and visiting friends. On May 7, 2007, he was last seen leaving work, looking forward to catching up with a friend and tending to his plants at home. When Trevor failed to show up for planned activities and could not be reached, concern quickly spread among his family and friends. His absence was immediately out of character, and those who knew him feared the worst. Trevor's murder and subsequent discovery of his body under a boardwalk at Frenchman Lake sent shockwaves through the Dartmouth and Halifax communities. The brutality of his death, coupled with the knowledge that he was targeted in a place where he felt safe, left friends and family devastated. The discovery of Trevor's body was made by a resident out for a walk in the peaceful wooded area surrounding the lake. What began as a routine stroll quickly turned grim when the person noticed a partially concealed figure under the boardwalk, shirtless and motionless, with a visible wound to the abdomen. The shocked witness immediately contacted Halifax Regional Police, who responded swiftly, sealing off the area and initiating a full-scale homicide investigation. More after a quick break. And we are back. Matthew, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, what's striking and enraging really is how familiar this pattern is. Gay men being targeted in spaces where they're just trying to exist and connect and feel safe. And then being blamed often, I'm sure there's people that were blaming them for where they were, how they lived, instead of what was done to them.
Yep, absolutely. That's always part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The high-risk lifestyle, quote-unquote.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Make me barf.
You don't hear that as much today as we used to, so...
yeah, because I'd bitch slap a person that said that.
No. The crime scene at Frenchman Lake was somber and unsettling. Brewster's body had been carefully hidden beneath the boardwalk, his shoes placed neatly beside him, and his pants undone. A detail that, along with the location, led investigators to consider the possibility of a sexual motive or at least an attempt to humiliate or degrade the victim. The secluded setting, surrounded by thick brush and accessible only by footpaths, suggested the killer's intent to delay discovery, echoing the earlier concealment of Michael Knott's remains in Mill Cove. Forensic investigators meticulously documented the scene, collecting evidence and searching for any clues that might identify the perpetrator or explain the sequence of events.
Again, a killer who A, knew what he was doing, and B, tried to hide the evidence is what I'm seeing in this.
Yeah. The autopsy and forensic examination revealed the extent of violence that Trevor Brewster had suffered. He had been subjected to a frenzied attack involving both blunt force trauma and sharp force injuries, resulting in multiple stab wounds to the head, neck, and throat, as well as significant defensive wounds on his hands and arms, clear signs that Brewster had fought desperately for his life. The pathology report confirmed that the cause of death was homicidal violence, with the combination of blunt and sharp force trauma proving fatal. Brewster had been killed elsewhere and dragged to where he'd been found. The similarities between Brewster's murder and that of Michael Knott, both victims being gay men, both killed with extreme violence and left in secluded locations, prompted police to consider the possibility of a serial offender. Again, they were careful not to speculate publicly about motive or connections until more evidence was gathered. The discovery of Trevor Brewster's body sent shockwaves through Halifax's queer community, already reeling from Knott's murder days earlier. Friends and colleagues described Brewster as well-known and well-liked, a gentle and caring man whose sudden, violent death left many feeling vulnerable and afraid. The police response intensified with heightened patrols in known cruising areas and increased outreach to the community. Forensic teams worked around the clock, piecing together the timeline and searching for any forensic link between the two murders. Complicating the investigation was the disappearance of Trevor Brewster's black Honda Civic, license plate DYS031, which police quickly identified as a critical lead. Public appeals were made for information about the missing vehicle, which, as later revealed, Glen Douglas Race, the killer of both men, used to flee the province and continue his violent spree. According to the agreed statement of facts in later court proceedings, Glen Douglas Race was born March 5, 1981, to what might have seemed like an ordinary loving family. His father, Mark Race, worked as a chemical supervisor at a power plant, while his mother, Donna, worked as a cashier. Glen also had a younger brother, Douglas. The Race family moved around Nova Scotia during Glen's youth, first settling in Mount Uniacke, then relocating to Dartmouth in 1990, and finally to Windsor in 2005. There was no known history of violence or abuse in the Race household. By all outward appearances, the family was stable and supportive. As a child and adolescent, Glen showed no early signs of trouble. He had no documented issues with hyperactivity, criminal behavior, substance abuse, or conduct disorders. Though he struggled with loneliness and depression in junior high, these difficulties seemed to dissipate during high school, where he thrived both academically and socially. He joined the football team, co-captained at one point, and became actively involved in music. Glen had a natural aptitude for mathematics and earned good grades, eventually securing admission to Dalhousie University in Halifax to study mechanical engineering in the fall of 1999. But by the following year, things began to unravel. During a trip to Taipei in 2000 to teach English, Glen started using drugs more frequently, experimenting with marijuana and ecstasy. Upon his return to Halifax, he began using marijuana daily, which continued for nearly a year. His mental health rapidly declined during his second year at university. He started skipping classes, withdrew from his studies, and may have experienced a major depressive episode. Though he returned for the second semester, his engagement was fleeting. In August 2001, a trip to Montreal with fraternity friends marked a significant turning point. Glen consumed a cocktail of drugs including marijuana, ecstasy, mushrooms, alcohol, and cocaine. After returning home, he confessed to feeling intensely paranoid and resolved to quit drugs. He dropped out of university soon after and returned to live with his parents. That fall, he isolated himself in their basement for 5 days, cutting off all electricity and communication. He refused food and water except in small amounts, explaining his behavior as a spiritual purification, a desire to understand, quote, need versus want. During this period, he lost 40 pounds.
So that's what I need to do to shift this weight.
Oh, okay.
I need spiritual purification, Mike.
I think I do too.
You've been doing well, though.
I'm not doing as well as I would like. I plateaued and then went up a tiny bit, and
that's always it's that plateau and start going up again is always the killer, right?
But speaking of the killer, let's get back to this.
Okay.
Oh boy. Glen Race's family grew increasingly alarmed about his behavior and sought psychiatric help. In October 2001, Glen was diagnosed with major depression with psychotic features, but he refused medication. His thoughts became increasingly disorganized and philosophical to the point of incoherence. On November 2, 2001, he expressed a desire to retreat into the woods to solve his problems. He was formally admitted to the Nova Scotia hospital as an involuntary patient. Psychiatric evaluations noted his guarded demeanor, illogical reasoning, and potential signs of schizophrenia. He twice escaped the facility, once returning voluntarily, the second time disappearing for over a week. When police found him, he'd been living in a dumpster. Despite medication, Glen showed only partial improvement. He remained paranoid and resistant, often muttering to himself and drawing symbols like pentagrams. He feared hospital staff were spiritual vampires and became obsessed with garlic, believing it could repel demons. He received a diagnosis of, quote, psychosis, not otherwise specified, with paranoid schizophrenia considered a likely underlying cause. Over the next few years, Glen's condition remained unstable and largely untreated. Between 2002 and 2003, he became a recluse. He barely left the family home, neglected basic hygiene, and gained excessive weight. He told his family he could hear others' thoughts and believed he was being psychically attacked. In 2004, he emerged from his seclusion, exhibiting disturbing delusions. He spoke of vampires, claimed the ability to talk to trees, and believed he was a godlike figure of higher consciousness. He began carrying knives and occasionally became violent, once smashing a computer and on another occasion striking his father with a rake for, quote, harming the grass. In April 2005, Glen left home intending to walk to Vancouver, then head south into Mexico or the Caribbean. Along the way, he broke into a cabin to dry off and was arrested. This incident led to a stay at the East Coast Forensic Hospital, where he was formally diagnosed with disorganized type schizophrenia. The evaluating psychiatrist described Glen as exhibiting, quote, extreme psychosis and, quote, extensive delusions. Despite these findings, Glen was found fit to stand trial and not criminally insane. The break-in charges against him were eventually dropped and he returned home.
So I find it interesting that he was considered not criminally insane for a break-in. Mm-hmm. But I bet we're going to see that when it came to killing two people, he was.
Yeah. I think in this case, it boils down to money. They probably weren't willing to go through the process of the two trials, the one that would determine whether or not he was criminally responsible, and then a second one for the guilt phase because of the nature of the crime. I mean, these were more petty. As usual, it just boils down to money. What does the justice system think this crime is worth? Rightfully so, you can only try somebody on something they have done, not something they may do. Through 2006 and into 2007, Glen's mental health continued to decline. Despite 2 more hospitalizations and brief improvements on antipsychotic medication, he remained profoundly ill. He would bathe himself in salt, feed rice to spirits, and claim to have the power to forgive sin, though he never would. In one incident, he painted himself and his bedroom white to purify the space. In another, he told his parents to kill themselves to avoid spiritual torture. His family made repeated efforts to get him help, but he routinely refused treatment and medication. By early 2007, Glen's behavior had become so erratic that his father reached out to his caseworker, reporting that Glen was meditating for hours, fasting, and withdrawing from even his brother. He made a pilgrimage to a monastery in New Brunswick, then vanished to Montreal, abandoning his possessions at a cathedral. His return home offered no clarity, with more salt rituals, knife carrying, and spiritual paranoia. On May 1st, 2007, Glen Race awoke in his new apartment on North Street in Halifax, his first day living independently after years under the watchful care of his parents. He began his day like any other young man setting out on his own might, visiting local businesses, making small purchases, and running errands. He stopped at a bicycle store to buy something minor, had lunch at a nearby Sobeys, picked up a prepaid long-distance phone card, and paid a visit to the Halifax Public Library. There he settled his fines for overdue books, volumes on topics ranging from the Amazon River in Central America to private investigation techniques. He borrowed 2 new travel books, one detailing adventures through Mexico and the other covering Belize and Guatemala. These choices hinted at his wandering mind and possibly his intentions to flee or disappear. That afternoon, Glen Race stopped by a Royal Bank of Canada branch and withdrew funds, likely in preparation for the days ahead. Meanwhile, across town, 44-year-old Michael Knott spent the afternoon with his 17-year-old daughter Jennifer. The two went shopping at Zeller's and other stores, and eventually, Michael dropped her off for her shift at a job in the Bayers Lake Business Park. He kissed her goodbye, promised to see her later that evening, and drove off, unaware it would be the last time they'd ever speak. Sometime later that evening, Glen and Michael Knott crossed paths, almost certainly by chance, at Citadel Hill, a known meeting place for gay men in Halifax. What transpired between them in the shadowed hours of that night remains partially speculative, but what is certain is the grim outcome. Between the evening of May 1st and the early morning hours of May 2nd, Glen Race attacked Michael Knott with a knife, brutally killing him. He then transported Michael's body more than 60 kilometers southwest to the remote, densely forested area near Mill Cove. There, along a narrow, overgrown path of dirt road, Glen Race disposed of Michael's body, abandoning it in the wilderness where it would remain undiscovered for days. As dawn broke on May 2nd, Jennifer Knott awoke to an empty house. Her father's absence was immediately alarming. He was a devoted and attentive dad, known to call and ensure she was up for school even if he left early. Growing increasingly anxious, Jennifer tried repeatedly to reach him throughout the day, but her calls went unanswered. Meanwhile, Glen Race, having left Michael Knott's corpse in the forest, began a strange and erratic journey across Halifax in Michael Knott's blue Chevy Malibu. That morning, he visited a convenience store where he behaved oddly, avoiding security cameras while fumbling with various ATM cards. The clerk, suspicious of his conduct, noted the car's license plate. Glen Race then went to a Petro-Canada station where he looked at a phone book and jotted down contact information for 3 firearm dealers in the city. Next, he visited Canadian Tire, where he purchased a small gasoline canister, and then a superstore to buy laundry detergent, again attempting unsuccessfully to access money via an ATM.
All of this behavior shows to me that he knew what he did was wrong and he was trying to not get caught.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but later on we'll see that some experts did. Later that afternoon, Glen Race withdrew $40 from his account at an ATM at Sobeys and made a small purchase at a Needs convenience store. His movements were meticulous, yet inexplicably unsettling, marked by small, seemingly unrelated purchases and deliberate efforts to conceal his identity and actions. That evening, he bought gasoline for $42.82 at an Ultramar station and then made one of the more telling purchases of the day, a large buck hunting knife at Walmart for $62.25. It's believed he purchased this knife after losing the original weapon used in Michael Knott's killing. As Jennifer Knott's concern deepened into dread, she began contacting extended family, none of whom had heard from her dad. Her panic culminated that night in a call to police to report her father missing. Later that evening, Glen Race drove Michael Knott's Malibu toward the old Guysborough Road near the Halifax International Airport. He turned down a rough, muddy path and got the vehicle stuck. Before abandoning it, he undertook a series of calculated efforts to erase evidence. He removed the license plate and decals, covered the blood-soaked back seat with a tarp, cleaned blood from the front seats, locked the doors, and etched a message onto the hood. "Waiting for friend's tow truck. Thanks." He kept the removed license plate and decals with him. Using a bicycle stored in the Malibu's trunk, Glen Race pedaled to a Petro-Canada gas station in Fall River. At 8:30 a.m. on Monday the 3rd, he called his father, Mark, asking to be picked up. When Mark Race arrived, he saw his son descending from a nearby hill pushing a broken 18-speed bike. They loaded the bicycle into Mark's Ford truck and drove to the family's home in Windsor. During the ride, Mark noticed his son was behaving strangely, holding his breath for long periods. Once home, Glen urged his father to have the truck hosed down and insisted the bike stay in the bed so it too could be cleaned. The reasons for these requests went unsaid. Back in Windsor, Mark would soon make a disturbing discovery. While going through Glen's belongings, he found a license plate, one that belonged to Michael Knott's now missing Malibu. All Mark knew that it was a stranger's license plate. Only later would he realize his find's significance. When he confronted his son, Glen turned pale and offered no real explanation, only asking quietly to have the plate returned. The next day, May 4th, Mark drove Glen back to Halifax. That same day, Trevor Brewster, a cheerful and well-known Halifax restaurant worker, returned from vacation in the Dominican Republic. Trevor, 44, had spent 24 years working at the Steak and Stein and was scheduled to return to work the following Monday to begin training as a manager. He was widely admired and lived a quiet life with his beloved dog Polar. That evening, Trevor's absence from public life remained unnoticed as he quietly settled back into his routine, unaware that his path would soon cross with Glen Race's. The following day, May 5th, Glen Race was again moving through Halifax, engaging in erratic yet purposeful behavior. In the morning, he visited a Royal Bank branch to make account inquiries, attempting to use multiple cards, only one of which worked. Early that afternoon, he withdrew $120 at Sobeys. Meanwhile, deep in the woods of Mill Cove, a man riding his ATV stumbled upon a gruesome sight: the partially decomposed body of Michael Knott. Police were called, and the truth about Knott's disappearance began to surface.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is your use of the word purposeful here. His purposeful behavior.
Right.
Yeah, it was purposeful, and that to me is very telling.
It wasn't like random. He wasn't like screaming and sticking grapefruit up his bum or something weird like that. Like, it wasn't...
No offense to grapefruit bum stickers.
Right, exactly. But, you know, like sticking grapefruit up your bum in public is probably going to...
Where did that come from?
I don't know. It came from my...
Your weird brain.
I told you I woke up in a bit of a brain fog this morning, so that's kind of how it's going. That same afternoon, Mark Race returned to Halifax to pick Glen up. Glen was now concerned about laundry, insisting that his clothes be washed. His mother, Donna, obliged, but was alarmed when she discovered fragments of metal in the washing machine. She realized they spelled Malibu. When she asked Glen about them, he calmly requested the pieces back. She complied, never learning what he did with them afterward. As the investigation into Michael Knott's death progressed, new details began to emerge. On May 6th, 3 men riding ATVs near the Halifax airport came across an abandoned mud-covered vehicle, the Malibu. The license plates and decals were missing, and the back seat was concealed beneath a tarp. The next morning, one of the men heard a radio report describing the missing car and called police. By May 7th, authorities confirmed that the vehicle belonged to Paul Michael Knott. Inside, they found a knife lodged between the front seat and the center console, bearing Glen Race's fingerprints. Packaging from a buck knife, the one Race had purchased at Walmart on May 2nd, was also found in the vehicle. It appeared Glen Race believed he'd lost the original murder weapon and replaced it in preparation for further violence. That Monday, Trevor Brewster returned to work at the Steak and Stein. He was upbeat, chatting about his recent vacation, and made plans to visit a friend that night. At the same time, Glen Race returned to the public library in Dartmouth and dropped off the travel books he had borrowed on May 1st. Later that evening, around 10:51, Brewster finished his shift and called his friend to confirm his visit. He never arrived. Sometime between late May 7th and the early morning of May 8th, Trevor Brewster and Glen Race crossed paths, likely by chance, at Frenchman Lake in the Burnside Industrial Park. As with Knott, it appears the meeting was not prearranged, and like Michael Knott, Trevor Brewster would not survive the encounter. Glen Race attacked him with overwhelming violence, using blunt force and multiple stab wounds to Brewster's head, neck, and throat. After the killing, Glen Race dragged Trevor's body beneath the small wharf at the edge of the lake. He partially covered it with a garbage bag weighed down with rocks. His shoes were neatly placed beside him, and his pants were undone, his penis exposed. The staging was intentional, disturbing, and possibly ritualistic. When he was done, Glen Race drove off in Trevor Brewster's black Honda Civic. At 1:31 a.m. on May 8th, RCMP officers noticed the Civic at an intersection in Dartmouth. The vehicle peeled away, tires screeching. When the officers activated their lights and sirens, the car accelerated aggressively. Concerned for public safety, they called off the high-speed pursuit. They ran the plates and learned the vehicle belonged to Trevor Brewster. Officers went to Brewster's home but found no sign of him or the car. Just over an hour later, at 2:50 a.m., Glen Race approached a toll station on the Cobequid Highway, about 150 kilometers north of Halifax. He asked the toll attendant if he was on the correct road to the American border and wanted directions. The attendant, observing Race's awkward gear shifting, suspected he was unfamiliar with driving a manual transmission. Later that morning at 7:18 a.m., Glen Race withdrew $20 from a gas station ATM in Canaan, New Brunswick. He then phoned his parents and claimed he was heading to a monastery. When his father refused to send money, Glen pressed on. By 8 a.m., he had arrived at the Our Lady of Cavalry Abbey in Rogersville, a monastery he had visited before. Though told he could not stay due to a conference, Glen lingered for several hours. He washed himself, cleaned Brewster's stolen car, and spoke calmly with a priest claiming he was driving his father's vehicle. After leaving the monastery, Glen Race traveled hundreds of kilometers through Quebec, ultimately abandoning the Civic deep in the woods on private property near Havelock, just a few kilometers from the U.S. border. He took care to obscure the car's identity, removing plates, covering lights with mud, and draping the vehicle with tree branches. He then vanished into the forest and crossed illegally into the United States.
All of this to me is not what a man who's in deep psychosis and unaware of his actions would do, and no psychiatrist is going to tell me otherwise.
Yeah, well, they're going to try, and we'll see.
Boy, this is frustrating.
Yeah. By the time authorities uncovered Trevor Brewster's body on May 9th, Glen Race was already gone, headed south through New York, eventually winding his way into Texas, where his deadly trail would finally come to an end. But in Nova Scotia, the horrifying truth had only just begun to surface. 2 men murdered in cold blood, both killed in acts of intimate violence by a man battling extreme psychosis, and whose journey into darkness was far from over. In our next episode, we'll hear about yet another murder committed by Glen Douglas Race, this time in New York, his dramatic capture in Texas, and the complex web of court proceedings that left the families and friends of Race's victims reeling. And that's it for Dark Poutine, episode 371, 2 Flavors of Justice, Part 1, The Murders of Michael Knott and Trevor Brewster.
That's right. It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Here's our first and only voicemail. Let's have a listen.
Hi, Mike and Matt. I just wanted to call and let you guys know how amazing you are. I'm just not sure if you know, I'm sure you do, but I'm not sure if you know how impactful your show is to people. I just wanted to leave a message and let you guys know that during my month-and-a-half stay in the NICU with my baby, you guys were just an amazing source of normality for me. You'll know exactly where I'm talking about, but we stayed in London for 27 days, and then we stayed in Stratford for 18 days, and we've now been home for 2 months, and I just wanted to let you know that I am so thankful that I had your show to listen to while I was there, and it just reminded me of home because I've been a long-time listener. So I just wanted to let you guys know that you offer so much peace for people, and you guys are just so amazing. It feels like you're my buddies at this point, even though we've never met. So yeah, my name is Ivy. I'm from a tiny village called Gorey in Ontario. That's about 2 hours from London and an hour from Stratford. And yeah, feel free to give me a new job, but I work for the Weed Man. It's not what you may think it is, but it's a lawn care company. I do all the customer service, so I get to talk to people all the time, and I love doing that. If I could start my own podcast, I would, because I just love talking. Yes, I just wanted to leave a message and let you guys know how thankful I am for you guys are just amazing. Like, just thank you so much for just being who you are. And I hope that you have a great day and great rest of your week, and go shit in your hat. Thanks. Bye.
Well, there you go. That was very sweet.
That was great.
That was very,
And
very sweet.
Her life must have been upside down if we provide normalcy.
Right? I was thinking that too. I
But
was just like, oh my gosh.
But that was really nice to hear. It's been, to quote Queen Elizabeth, it has been annus horribilis for me this year. And to hear nice things like that actually is honestly meaningful to me.
To me too, and both of us have been through a bit of a year so far, and it's like the year we're coming up on the halfway point, and it's just like
annus horribilis, the horrible anus of a year.
Yeah, right.
She is the president of the Edward Gorey fan club.
The president of the Edward Gorey fan club. Well, that's fun. I love Edward Gorey.
Yeah.
I think his cartoons were amazing.
Yeah, just because she's from Gorey, and I know he's not from there, but she thought, you know what? I'm from Gorey. I'm going to start the Edward Gorey fan club.
Well, there you have it. That's kind of fun.
That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome.
All right. Well, we do have some donut money donors. Matthew, first up is Brianna Sigurdsson, and she says she gives us a certain amount of money for 360 episodes, and she says, I've finally caught up to them all after taking a hiatus from podcasts. When on maternity leave, I'm back. Yours specifically helps my commute. Thanks for all your hard work and research and presentation of the topics.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you. Brianna, we've seen before. I do believe she's a Yumberyarder.
Yes, she is. If it's the same Brianna.
Yeah, it is. What does Brianna do, Matthew, for a living? And where does she live?
She lives just outside of Frankfurt.
Frankfurt, Germany?
Yeah, and she...
Was ist mit der Panzer?
And she is she teaches Wittgenstein.
What?
Wittgenstein.
What's that?
Look him up.
No. I'm not looking him up. You have to know and you have to you have to tell people.
I'm not going to. Everyone has to.
Wittgenstein. Why would you do that?
Why would I do what?
Well, number one, it's spelled weird. It's Ludwig Wittgenstein. Is that what you're talking about? The person that you're talking about, who isn't German.
He's Austrian, but doesn't just. But Mike, there's probably people that teach Wittgenstein in Canada as well, and they're not in Austria.
Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how about them apples? The philosophy of mathematics and philosophy of the mind. That's fantastic.
You knew who Wittgenstein was, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Anyway, let's move on.
I'll lend you one of his books.
Oh, yeah, and it'll sit on my shelf and gather dust because I have so many books to read already.
Anyway,
thanks,
Brianna. I'm sorry that Mike just refused to let me give you an intellectual job there.
Well, you know what?
I think you don't. I don't think you think enough of Brianna, Mike.
What are you talking about?
Brianna,
go shit in your hat.
Brianna, I'm on your side, babe.
Matthew can go shit in his hat.
I can go put a pamplemousse up my bum.
Pamplemousse. Où est le pamplemousse pour le derrière?
Pamplemousse is one of my favorite French words.
Oh boy.
Juste pamplemousse.
Juste pamplemousse. Next we have Monique Johanna Stone.
Excellent.
And she says, hello from Dawson City, Yukon.
Wow.
Well, we know where she lives. Enjoy your coffee and donuts. You both really deserve it. I have been a longtime fan and patron. Look forward to each Monday morning. Monique, the gold digger.
Ooh,
Interesting.
I think she breeds and raises pamplemousses.
How do you breed a pamplemousse?
Well, like,
is it like it's an actual moose?
Like hybrids. Like,
they're hybrid pamplemousses.
Do you breed plants? If you're like
I
making
don't know
hybrids,
how it works.
what's that word? Anyway,
You grow them.
She grows and splices and creates all kind of interesting pamplemousses in a greenhouse up in Dawson Creek.
So it's pamplemousse husbandry.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. Well, that's kind of
if
fun.
a woman does it, is it husbandry or is it wifery?
I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's like gender specific.
But why husbandry? Maybe it's a different. I bet you husbandry doesn't have. Bet you it's not connected to the word husband at all. It's a different.
It probably is
from a different Latin root, probably.
I don't know. I haven't bothered with the etymology of husbandry, so I probably should at some point.
Well, there's something for you to look up today.
Great.
I need
more things to research.
Along with Wittgenstein.
I'm looking at his dumb face right now. Anyway.
He looked a bit angry, didn't he?
He did. He looked like a cranky guy.
He looks like a cranky. He looks like a cranky philosopher.
Yeah, right? Somebody who would have been hard on the head. Next up, we have Robin McDonald. And Robin, spelled with a Y, says, enjoy some cinnamon rolls instead of donuts, from Robin. I do like a good cinnamon roll. Thank you, Robin. And Robin emailed me to make sure that we got our donut money.
Thank you, Robin.
And, yeah. So,
Robin with a Y.
Robin with a Y. I wonder where Robin lives.
She lives, is it Sweden? I think, is this Robin, like the pop singer? I've never known her.
It could be.
Never known her last name. I've been listening to Robin all week, actually.
Yeah.
Dancing on My Own.
Great song. Great song.
And With Every Heartbeat, fantastic song. Yeah, Robin has some good pop music. But so thank you for the music and for the Cinnabon Mon.
What's the name of the band that Robin often sings with?
Roixop.
That's right. That's it exactly. I like them too. I very much like that. So there you go. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So Sweden and the singer, Robin. Well, I'm good with that. I wouldn't have said that Robin, whose real name is Robin Miriam Carlson,
okay,
was Swedish using McDonald. So, but whatever. Whatever. It is what it is. Thank you so much. Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or interact using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that's it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Bye, y'all.
Ciao da.